Not because of his money, not because of his looks, and not even because of his past, but because of the way he carries his presence into a room. There is something about a man over 60 who understands this truth, and when he does, women feel it instantly. It's quiet, it's powerful, and it's something most men spend their entire lives chasing without ever realizing they already have it. There was a man I once observed sitting alone in a small cafe. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. No loud voice, no flashy watch, no desperate glances around the room, just calm, just grounded, just present. And yet something strange kept happening. People noticed him. Women noticed him. Not in a loud, obvious way, but in subtle glances, in the way conversations around him softened, in the way attention slowly leaned toward him without him asking for it. That's when it hit me. The thing most men waste is not their time, not their money, not even their opportunities. It's their presence. You see, by the time a man reaches 60, life has already given him something priceless. Experience, pain, loss, growth, stories that no young man can fake, no matter how confident he pretends to be. But here's the tragedy: most men carry all of that like a burden instead of a power. They walk into a room trying to compete with younger men, trying to prove they still have it, trying to be louder, funnier, more energetic. And in doing that, they completely miss the one thing that actually makes them irresistible. They forget who they've become. Women don't resist a man over 60 who embraces his calm authority. They don't resist a man who no longer feels the need to chase validation. They don't resist a man who has made peace with himself, because peace is rare. Think about it. How many people do you know who are truly at ease with who they are? Not pretending, not performing, not seeking approval, just comfortable in their own skin, almost no one. And that's why when a man over 60 finally steps into that energy, it becomes magnetic, not because he's trying to attract, but because he's no longer trying at all. There's a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you've lived enough life to stop proving yourself. A confidence that doesn't need to speak loudly because it doesn't doubt itself anymore, and women feel that. Deeply, they feel safe around it. They feel curious around it. They feel drawn to it in a way they can't always explain. But here's where most men go wrong. Instead of leaning into this natural power, they fight it. They resist aging. They resist slowing down. They resist becoming more reflective, more grounded, more intentional. They think attraction is about energy in the loudest sense, movement, excitement, performance. But true attraction, especially to a mature woman, or even a younger woman seeking something deeper, is about emotional gravity. It's about the ability to hold space, to listen without rushing, to speak without needing to impress, to exist without seeking approval, and that kind of presence can't be faked. It can't be rushed. It can only be developed through a lifetime of becoming. There's something deeply attractive about a man who has nothing to prove but everything to offer. A man who doesn't chase attention because he understands that attention comes naturally to those who are fully themselves. And yet, most men never reach this point, even at 60, because they spend their lives looking outward instead of inward. They chase success without understanding themselves. They chase relationships without mastering their emotions. They chase validation without ever asking why they need it in the first place. So when they finally reach a stage in life where they could become powerful in the deepest sense, they're too busy holding onto the habits that kept them small. But the man who breaks out of that, the man who decides to finally let go of the need to impress, to compete, to prove, he becomes something rare. He becomes grounded, and grounded men are unforgettable. There's a certain way he looks at the world. Not with desperation, but with understanding. Not with urgency, but with patience. He knows that not everything needs to be rushed. Not every silence needs to be filled. Not every moment needs to be turned into performance, and that changes everything. Because when a woman interacts with a man like that, she doesn't feel pressure, she feels space, she feels seen. She feels like she can relax her guard because he isn't trying to take anything from her. He's simply there. And that kind of energy is incredibly rare. Most men, even in their older years, still operate from a place of lack. They think attraction is about doing more, saying more, proving more, but the truth is, it's about becoming less of what you're not. Letting go of insecurity, letting go of comparison, letting go of the need to be liked. Because the moment a man releases those things, he steps into something far more powerful than attraction. He steps into authenticity, and authenticity is irresistible. This is what women feel when they encounter a man over 60 who has truly understood himself. It's not about age, it's about depth. It's about the quiet strength that comes from living, learning, and finally letting go. But there's still something deeper that most men completely overlook. Something even more powerful than presence, more magnetic than confidence, and more attractive than experience. And once you understand this, everything changes. There was a moment in that same cafe when something even more revealing happened. A woman walked in, younger than him, confident in her own way, the kind of presence that usually turns heads the second she enters a room. And like most men would, you might expect him to react, to glance quickly, to adjust himself, to show even the smallest sign of interest. But he didn't, not out of arrogance, not out of disinterest, but out of something far more powerful: self-containment. He acknowledged her presence the way a man acknowledges the world, aware, but not shaken, and that subtle difference changed everything. Because most men react. They react to beauty, to attention, to the possibility of validation. Their energy shifts, their focus breaks, their composure slips just enough to say, "You've affected me." But a man who has mastered himself does not give that away so easily, and women feel that instantly. It creates curiosity, it creates intrigue, it creates a quiet question in her mind: why isn't he reacting like the others? And that question is where attraction begins to grow. You see, what women can't resist in a man over 60 isn't just his calm presence, it's his emotional independence. A man who is not easily moved becomes deeply interesting, not cold, not distant, but grounded in a way that shows he chooses his reactions instead of being controlled by them. This is where most men are wasting their power. They give away their attention too freely. They give away their reactions too quickly. They give away their emotional energy without even realizing its value, and in doing that, they lower their presence without ever intending to. But the man who understands this becomes selective, not in a harsh or calculated way, but in a natural, effortless way. He doesn't need to engage with everything. He doesn't need to respond to every moment. He understands that his attention is a currency, and he spends it wisely. There's something incredibly attractive about a man who doesn't rush to fill silence. A man who can sit in a moment, look someone in the eye, and allow the space between words to exist without discomfort. Because that space carries weight, it shows confidence, it shows control, it shows that he is not afraid of stillness. And stillness in a world full of noise becomes magnetic. Women feel safe in that stillness. They feel like they can breathe, like they can be themselves without needing to perform. And ironically, that's when they begin to lean in more, not because he chased them, but because he gave them space to come closer. There's a quiet power in restraint that most men never learn. They think attraction is built through constant engagement, through jokes, stories, energy, movement. But real attraction, especially at a deeper level, grows in the pauses. In the moments where nothing is forced. In the moments where a man simply exists as he is, without trying to shape himself into what he thinks she wants. And here's the truth that most men struggle to accept the less you try to impress. the more you stand out. Because authenticity has a presence of its own. It doesn't need decoration. It doesn't need exaggeration. It doesn't need performance. It just is. And a man over 60 who embodies this becomes incredibly rare. He speaks when he has something to say, not because he feels the need to fill space. He listens not just to respond, but to understand. He carries himself with a quiet certainty that says, I know who I am, and I don't need you to confirm it. That energy is deeply attractive, not just to women, but to people in general. Because in a world where everyone is trying to be seen, the man who is simply being becomes the one who is noticed the most. But there's another layer to this that goes even deeper. It's not just about how he shows up externally. It's about what he has made peace with internally, because no amount of calm behavior can hide inner chaos forever. And women, especially those who are emotionally aware, can sense that. They can feel when a man is pretending to be grounded versus when he truly is. The man who becomes irresistible at this stage of life is the one who has faced himself, who has looked at his past, his mistakes, his regrets, and instead of running from them, he has learned from them. He doesn't carry shame, he carries wisdom. He doesn't carry insecurity, he carries understanding, and that changes the way he connects with others. Because now he's not interacting from a place of need, he's interacting from a place of wholeness. And when a woman feels that, she feels something different. She feels like she's not being used to fill a void. She feels like she's being invited into a life that is already full, and that is incredibly powerful. Most men never realize this. They think attraction is about becoming more successful, more charming, more impressive, but the truth is it's about becoming complete. Because when a man is complete within himself, he stops chasing. And when he stops chasing, everything begins to come to him, not because he's trying to attract it, but because his energy no longer repels it. There's something deeply compelling about a man who is at peace with his own life, who doesn't feel the need to prove that he's happy because he simply is. And that kind of peace creates a quiet pull that's hard to ignore. But there's still one more thing, something even deeper than presence, even stronger than emotional control, something that truly separates the man who is noticed from the man who is remembered. And once you understand this final shift, you don't just attract attention, you create impact. There's a difference between being noticed and being remembered. And most men, even the confident ones, never cross that line. They might capture attention for a moment. They might spark interest, even admiration, but it fades, it slips away. It becomes just another interaction in a long list of forgettable moments. But the man who understands this next truth, he leaves something behind in every interaction, something deeper than words, something that lingers. It's not what he says, it's how he makes people feel about themselves. That's the shift. Because at 60 and beyond, a man who has truly evolved understands that connection is no longer about impressing someone, it's about awakening something within them. There was an older man I once spoke to, and the conversation itself wasn't extraordinary on the surface. He didn't say anything groundbreaking. He didn't try to dominate the interaction, but when I walked away, I felt different. Lighter, seen, valued, and that feeling stayed with me far longer than anything he actually said. That's when it became clear. The most irresistible men are not the ones who talk the most. They are the ones who understand the emotional impact they leave behind. Women don't remember your stories as much as they remember how you made them feel in your presence. Did she feel heard? Did she feel respected? Did she feel like she could drop her guard for a moment and just be real? Or did she feel like she was being evaluated, judged, or subtly pressured to meet some expectation? These are the silent questions that shape attraction, and the man who answers them without even speaking becomes unforgettable. You see, when a man reaches a certain level of maturity, his power is no longer in his ability to take. It's in his ability to give, not in a way that seeks approval, not in a way that tries to earn affection, but in a way that naturally adds value to every interaction he enters. He gives attention, but not cheaply. He gives presence, but not forcefully. He gives understanding without making it about himself. And in doing so, he creates a space where a woman feels something rare. She feels emotionally safe. Now understand this clearly: emotional safety is not weakness, it's not passivity. It's strength in its most refined form, because it takes a strong man to listen without interrupting, to understand without reacting, to be patient in a world that rewards speed. And when a woman feels that from a man over 60, she doesn't just see his age, she sees his depth, and depth is something that can't be taught quickly, it can't be faked, it can't be borrowed from books or copied from others. It comes from living, from failing, from reflecting, from choosing to grow instead of becoming bitter. And that's why most men waste it, because they let life harden them instead of refine them. They carry their disappointments like armor. They become guarded, distant, sometimes even cynical, and while they think they're protecting themselves, they're actually closing off the very energy that makes them attractive. But the man who does the opposite, the man who softens without becoming weak, who opens without losing himself, becomes incredibly rare. He doesn't project his past onto the present. He doesn't punish new people for old wounds. He meets each moment with a quiet openness that says, I've lived, I've learned, and I'm still here. And that energy is deeply compelling, because now, when a woman interacts with him, she's not dealing with unresolved tension or hidden frustration. She's experiencing clarity, and clarity feels good. It feels calm. It feels honest. It feels real. And in a world where so many interactions are filled with hidden agendas, mixed signals, and emotional confusion, that kind of clarity becomes magnetic. But there's one more layer to this, something that transforms a man from simply attractive to deeply influential. It's the way he sees others, not just on the surface, but beyond it. A man who has truly grown doesn't just look at a woman and see her appearance. He sees her energy, her emotions, her unspoken thoughts. He notices the small things, the pauses in her speech, the shifts in her tone, the moments where she reveals something without realizing it. And instead of exploiting that, he respects it, he acknowledges it, he responds to it with awareness. And that creates a connection that goes far beyond attraction. It becomes meaningful. It becomes memorable. It becomes something she doesn't encounter often, because most men are too focused on themselves to truly see someone else. But the man who truly sees, becomes unforgettable. He doesn't just exist in her memory as a face or a conversation. He exists as a feeling, and feelings are what people carry with them long after the moment has passed. This is what separates the man who is desired for a moment from the man who is thought about long after he's gone. And yet, even with all of this, there's still one final piece, the one thing that ties everything together. The one truth that, once understood, changes not just how others see you, but how you see yourself. And when that shift happens, everything else falls into place naturally. There comes a moment in a man's life when he either tightens his grip on who he used to be or finally releases it and steps fully into who he has become. And this is the final piece most men over 60 never truly claim. Because letting go sounds simple, but it isn't. It means letting go of the need to be admired the way you once were. Letting go of chasing the same kind of attention, the same validation, the same identity that belonged to a younger version of you. It means facing a quiet truth that your greatest power now does not come from what you can prove, but from what you no longer need to prove. The man who becomes irresistible at this stage of life is the one who has made peace with that transition. He doesn't try to compete with youth, he transcends it. He understands that what he offers now is not energy in the loud, restless sense, but energy in its most grounded, intentional form. There is something incredibly powerful about a man who walks into a room with no desire to be the center of attention and yet becomes the center of gravity. Not because he demands it, but because his presence carries weight, and that weight comes from alignment. His words match his actions. His actions match his values. His values are not borrowed, they are lived. And when a man reaches that level of alignment, something shifts in the way others experience him. There's no confusion, no mixed signals, no sense of performance, just clarity, and clarity is rare. Most people are walking contradictions. Saying one thing, feeling another, doing something completely different, and that inconsistency creates noise, emotional noise that people feel even if they can't explain it. But the man who has aligned himself internally becomes quiet in the most powerful way, and that quiet speaks louder than anything else. Women don't resist that kind of man because with him they don't have to guess, they don't have to decode, they don't have to protect themselves from uncertainty. They can simply experience the moment as it is. And that creates something deeper than attraction. It creates trust. Now understand, this trust is not built through words. It's built through consistency, through presence, through the subtle feeling that what you see is what you get. And a man over 60 who embodies this becomes incredibly rare, because at this stage, he has had enough time to either become fragmented or to become whole. Most choose fragmentation without realizing it. They carry different versions of themselves into different situations. They adapt, they adjust, they perform trying to fit into expectations that no longer serve them, but the man who chooses wholeness becomes simple. Not basic, not predictable, but clear. He no longer tries to be everything to everyone. He simply becomes himself fully. And that authenticity creates a kind of freedom that is deeply attractive, because now when a woman is around him, she doesn't feel like she's interacting with a mask. She feels like she's experiencing something real, and real is what people are starving for. In a world filled with filters, personas, and constant performance, the man who shows up as he is becomes unforgettable. Not because he's perfect, but because he's honest. There's a quiet dignity in that, a strength that doesn't need to be announced, a presence that doesn't need to be amplified, and that's the part most men waste. They think attraction is about adding more. More effort, more strategies, more techniques, but the truth is, it's about removing everything that isn't real. Letting go of the noise, letting go of the fear, letting go of the constant need to be seen a certain way. Because when all of that falls away, what's left is something far more powerful, a man who is simply himself. And that man doesn't chase attention, he doesn't chase approval, he doesn't chase connection. Because he understands something most never do, the right people are drawn to authenticity, the same way they are drawn to warmth. Naturally, effortlessly, without force, so instead of asking, "How do I attract her?" he begins to live from a different question: how can I be more aligned with who I truly am? And that question changes everything, because now his focus shifts inward. He refines his character. He deepens his understanding. He strengthens his presence. And without even trying, his external world begins to reflect that. People respond differently, conversations feel different, connections become deeper, not because he learned a new technique, but because he became a different man. And that is what women can't resist. Not age, not status, not appearance, but a man who has done the inner work to become whole. A man who is no longer searching for himself because he has finally found peace within. That's the man most men could become, but never do. And that's why he stands out. That's why he's remembered. That's why he's felt. And so when everything is stripped away, all the noise, all the chasing, All the endless effort to become someone else. What remains is the truth most men spend their entire lives avoiding. It was never about becoming more. It was about finally becoming real. Because the man women can't resist at 60 is not the man who tries to relive his past or compete with the present. He's the man who has the courage to stand fully in his own story, the wins, the losses, the scars, the lessons, all of it. Not hidden, not exaggerated, just owned. There's a quiet kind of power in that, the kind that doesn't demand attention, but earns respect. The kind that doesn't chase connection, but creates it. The kind that doesn't need to prove worth because it already knows it. And when a man reaches that place, something shifts not just in how others see him, but in how he experiences life itself. He stops seeking validation and starts offering presence. He stops fearing rejection and starts valuing alignment. He stops trying to be chosen and starts choosing what truly deserves his time, his energy, his attention. That's when everything changes, because now his life is no longer built around being liked, it's built around being true. And truth has a gravity to it. It pulls the right people closer. It filters out what doesn't belong. It creates connections that aren't forced, but felt. And that's the part most men never understand. Attraction is not something you chase. It's something you allow by becoming someone who no longer needs to chase anything at all. So if you take anything from this, let it be this one shift. Stop asking how to be more attractive. Start asking how to be more aligned, because the moment you step into that alignment fully, honestly, unapologetically, you don't just become a man women notice. You become a man they remember, not for what you said, not for what you did, but for how they felt in your presence. And that feeling is something they don't forget.